Hey guys, I'm Nicole Henschel and I'm going to talk to you guys about some of the ethical dilemmas in outsourcing. What is outsourcing? Outsourcing is when a business contracts work outside of the company to a third party to get something done. So here we have just a general map. I got this off the internet and it shows all of the things being sent out of the United States and sent all around to get things done. Outsourcing isn't just labor, although that's what we commonly think of. It can be IT, customer service, HR, basically anything can be outsourced. So that's just the general basis of what outsourcing is. First, I'm going to talk to you about some of the benefits of outsourcing. The most significant benefit of outsourcing is for sure the cost that you save. You can get things done at an unbelievably low amount when you outsource, and that is the most significant, the most substantial benefit of outsourcing is how much money you save. It is cheap to outsource. That's why we do it so much. You can get things done super cheap. And on to my next point, because of that you save, you have capital to be used elsewhere instead of on labor or whatever you're outsourcing. So let's say I'm a company and I outsource my labor. All of that money that I'm saving, I can use towards other things. I can use it towards advertising a new product. I can use it towards hiring new employees. I can use it towards research for a new product. It can be used for anything. So those two kind of go hand in hand, but the cost is the hugest is not a word, but you know what I'm saying. That is the biggest benefit of outsourcing. It creates jobs and opportunity in underdeveloped countries. A lot of times when you're outsourcing to places that are really underdeveloped and not very well off, and this is creating an opportunity for them. This is creating jobs for them and helping with their economy. So maybe eventually they can grow to be a more established country. Next, I'm going to talk about some of the negatives of outsourcing. The biggest one that you read about, and you'll see this in any major magazine that you go to, or CNN, Forbes, like all of those places, that it's taking away from U.S. jobs. I'm going to kind of just leave that one there because I'm going to talk about it more in my next slide, but that is one of the most talked about downfalls of outsourcing, is that it's taking away from jobs on our own soil. This was kind of on the last slide as a positive, but it's also a negative when you're working with underdeveloped countries. They're not as educated, and these are the people that are handling your final product that you're going to send to the consumer. So it's a negative and it's a positive, but it's a negative because you are working with underdeveloped countries and they might not have the same knowledge and skill set as people that you could find here in America. Another huge one, this is another one that you'll see all over the news, is the lack of regulation. This includes labor laws, child labor laws, safety regulations. All of that kind of falls under the lack of regulation, and so you'll see a lot about children that are slaving away in these quote-unquote sweatshops for hours on end because there's no limit on how many hours a week that they can work. There's no regulation on how much we have to pay them. Things like that. That's another one that you'll really a lot in the news. For instance, like the Bangladesh factory explosion, like that's a safety regulation that fell through, because there's not one. So that's definitely a negative of outsourcing. Poor working conditions, kind of touched on this. We've all seen the pictures of people working in these terrible environments, so that's definitely a negative of outsourcing as well. This is my view on outsourcing really changed over the summer. I took microeconomics with Professor Conaway, and we read this book. It corresponds with the class, and it's called The Economics of Public Issues. If you've ever read Freakonomics when you were in high school or even when you were in college, this book is kind of similar to that. It takes things that you might not necessarily think about and relates them back to econ, and really puts a different twist and perspective on them. So this book single-handedly changed how I looked at outsourcing, and I think it really just brings a fresh set of eyes and perspective on the issue. So the first thing I'm going to talk about is that actually oftentimes working in the factory is their best bet. We watched a whole series of videos in this class interviewing people that were like, I like my job. If I wasn't doing this, I would be working in a field making half the money, working more hours, sweating miserable, like heavy, hard labor on my body versus working in this factory. And that was something that I never even considered, is that if we do take away these jobs from the countries that we outsource them to, then what else are they going to do? What is their next best alternative? And that really opened my eyes to see that these factories they are bringing them opportunities, like we said, on the positives. It's really giving them an opportunity that they might not have had before. Another thing is that kind of goes along with the first one, but like I mentioned, they'll be making higher wages. That this is a good opportunity for them to make more money than they would, like I said, if they were working in agriculture, or who knows what else they'd be doing. So that's something to definitely consider. The third one is that, this is a huge one that I think people don't take into consideration, is that U.S. workers would not work for lower wages. For example, I make $7.50 an hour, and I work like 20 hours a week. And as a college student supporting myself, that's enough to get like groceries, like things to live off of, and maybe like a little bit of extra money on the side if I budget it right. So I know that I would never be able to work for 20 hours a week, or $20 a week, or $40 a week. I would never be able to do that, because that just wouldn't be enough for me to live off of. So think about, a husband or a wife supporting their family. That's not going to be enough money for them. So we never really consider that we would not be willing to work for these lower wages, and that, is something to consider. And along with that, what overall effect would this have on the economy? Well, if we can't pay people this very, very small price to do things, then we're going to have to pay them more if we're going to get your product made. So you're going to be paying, let's say, 3 times what you would be paying to get a product made in, let's say, India. And so that means that the cost of this product to the consumer is going to go up, which means that less consumers are going to be able to buy it, which results in companies going out of business, which in turn creates a whole nother unemployment issue. And this was something that had never even occurred to me. So outsourcing really does help us a lot, and would have an effect on the economy if we stopped altogether. And I just think that that's something that a lot of times we don't consider. Really quick, I threw in here a supply and demand graph so you can kind of see what the surplus would look like, because if we have people working for wages that they, let's say $2 an hour versus $7.25 an hour, then that's going to create a surplus of quantity supplied, which means that there's going to be jobs that people just won't take, even though we have an unemployment issue, just because of the basics of supply and demand. So I just wanted to give you guys a visual, kind of something to see, so that makes more sense to you. Finally, just some possible solutions with how to handle outsourcing. The first one is more safety regulations. For example, Walmart has started to require safety drills in their factories. This is something that you're starting to see more and more, as companies taking responsibility for their factories, across the country. And I think that if more companies did that for their factories, it would really change how people view outsourcing. So kudos to Walmart for taking responsibility and requiring safety drills, because things like that could really change the game and how people view outsourcing. One article that I read I thought was really interesting was talking about callers having to identify themselves. So let's say my iPhone breaks and I call Apple tech support, then they would have to say, like, hello, I'm so-and-so and I'm located in India, and then it's up to you whether you want to, if you feel comfortable discussing your information and stuff with them, just kind of as another way to be more transparent and ethical and give you that option, which I thought was a really unique perspective on things. And just, like I said, work on factory conditions, improve life for the workers, because like I said, this might be their best job, but there's definitely room for improvement, and I think that would help with a lot of the backlash that you get from people who are against outsourcing. Thank you guys for watching, and I hope that you now have a little bit more information than you did when you started about the ethics of outsourcing.